What's up? What's up? It's your man Sean P coming in live. This is the Sean P Experience, man. Live on YouTube. How y'all doing out there? We have another phenomenal episode of the Sean P Experience. I am very excited for this episode. It's been months in the making. A lot of conversation back and forth, and we finally here on game day at game time. I have my sister Diane Marie Brown. How you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Man, I'm excited. I'm a little antsy, anticipation. I can't wait to get into the nitty gritty of it, right? Before we
Yeah.
start, let me give you your official introduction, right?
All right.
So we have Diane Marie Brown, the professor at Orange Coast College in Costa Mesa, California, and a public health professional for the Long Beach Health Department. She has a BA and MPH from UCLA and a degree in fiction from USC's Master of Professional Writing program. Her work has appeared in Bomb Magazine, Hear Our Voices, Scary Mom, Women Writers, and the Audible blog and the Daily Brewing. She grew up in Stockton and now lives in Long Beach, California, with her husband, her four daughters, and their dog, Brownie. Her debut novel, Black Candle Women, is a Read with Jenna book club selection. I want to add on to that real fast before I get into the nitty gritty.
Okay.
As seen on today's show, right? Also, Reader's Digest, AARP Sisters, Goodreads, Book Riot. These are all named Best Book of the Month in Shondaland. My question is, first of all, how does that feel whenever you see that rattle off list like that? What does that feel
Yeah, it's pretty surreal, to be like you know, months before you're just writing not just for yourself, but you're in this bubble. Nobody knows who you are. Nobody's read anything that you've written. At least in my case, I didn't have any like published essays out or short stories or anything published really before. And so to have not only others reading it, but to hear that people are connecting with it, to hear kind words, to have mention in these spaces, it's really really it's real, but it uh, makes me excited about writing more.
like? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Um, so this show is called Sitting with the Griots, right? And your book is all about traditions from the past. Your book is all about traditions and carrying on our ancestral legacy, right? So sitting with the griots, how do you feel about being called a modern day griot or grioties for the ladies?
Yeah.
Does that feel like a big old weight on your shoulders? Does it feel like something you don't even think about? Like, how do you take that term, being the griot?
Well, I definitely, it's an honor. But I feel that there are so many modern day griots or griots. Just stories are told in so many different ways, right? We can share our stories in so many different ways, and so of course the oral tradition is really rich and it can be meaningful, but typically we see that just within family generations. Um, and then people who are blessed enough, lucky enough, fortunate enough to publish a book, they are telling their stories to a wider audience. But, I think about what people are doing like on Twitter. These younger folks they're sharing their stories in a way that makes sense for this time. And they are passing on their knowledge, their experiences, just in a different method, or the way that somebody might share a poem in some new and different way. Or I don't know. I feel like to be called that it is very very heavy, but I feel like there are a lot of individuals who can take that who can assume that title and feel comfortable in it. And I think we all should feel comfortable taking that title, because we all have such compelling, rich stories that we can tell about our lives, about people that we know, lessons we've learned that could be impactful to somebody else.
Yes, ma'am. Sure, sure. So before we get into the actual book, I have some rapid fire questions for you, real
Okay.
quick. So this book has some Louisiana roots, and
Yes.
reading in your book, I want to highlight this first. If you have this book, read the back of the book, please. We could have did a whole show on your author's notes, your
Oh,
acknowledgments alone. It was that good to me. You have a
uh,
well done acknowledgement section. I want to tell you that. But you
thank
have
you.
Louisiana roots, I understand. What's some of your favorite Louisiana cuisine? Your favorite New Orleans dishes?
Oh man, you're gonna put me on the spot. Um, because I'm gonna forget the name. Shoot. Uh, I do really like. I might have to even look it up real quick to. And I know, I'm sure you know. Um, it's on the tip of my tongue. But it's uh, shoot. The oysters. They had really great.
Mm-hmm. Are they charbroiled? I love
Char
charbroiled.
yes,
Oh my
charbroiled.
God. Yes. Yes.
Um,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and gosh, I've only been there once. No, I've been there twice, I think. But it was amazing. Um, and you've caught me at a senior moment where everything's on the tip of my tongue and I'm not going to be able to recall it.
That's okay.
But I've never had char grilled oysters until I wasn't
Yeah.
really an oysters fan until
Mm-hmm.
my daughter ordered them at a restaurant, and I'm like, "Are you sure you really want to try that?" 'Cause she's a picky eater. I'm a picky eater, but she's really picky. And so she's like, "Yeah." And so they brought them out, and I'm like, "Wow, that looks really good." And I'm like,
Yes.
"Try one?" And so I did, and I'm like, "Oh shoot, I might have to order I have to might get some of these myself." So I had them twice at that restaurant. And
Mhm.
is it Moro's? Is that a restaurant?
It is a restaurant. It is. It is.
Okay.
It is. Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yes, Moro's was delicious. Um,
Yeah, I love those charbroiled, man.
yes.
When I'm in
Yeah.
New Orleans, I gotta get it. Every time I go to New Orleans, something I want to look for. I love it.
When I was young, I used to go. I like I said, I'm a picky eater, but when I was young, I was a super picky eater, and so there was. But when I would go to New Orleans, everything was different than California. In California, I only ate McDonald's anyway. Um,
Wow, that's crazy.
yeah, but
So much great food in California, by the way. So much great food out
well, I mean, not to pick on my hometown, but Stockton is not
there.
really probably what you think of as like
Okay.
typical
Okay.
California. It's
Yes, ma'am.
um,
Yes, ma'am.
but there is a place called Murphy's that my uncle used to take us to. It was a barbecue place, and
Mm.
every time I was there, we had to go to Murphy's. I would have eaten there every single night because I just love the ribs.
Okay, now.
But I think it's gone now, and I don't eat ribs anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
So,
that's really what stuck
so
out to me.
I want to ask because in the book, for anybody that's reading this, there are recipes. You mentioned different cuisines and foods in this. I said, you know what? I gotta ask you a food question to start the show off with all the food that's mentioned in this book.
Definitely. And it's gonna come before the end of the show. It's gonna come to me. The place I really like for brunch, but it's gonna come to me.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. My next rapid fire question was, you are a professor, I see, and I love to ask this question. It slipped my mind sometime. I want to ask you though, as a professor, you have this book taken on by storm. Ava DuVernay is blurbing it, and Sadiqa Johnson, and all this Shondaland. Are your students aware of the fandom of this book? Are they like aware of that, or is it like two separate universes and they don't even know the way we see you? Right?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's pretty much two separate universes. Last year when I had to, I had because I don't even teach like creative writing. I'm not in the English department. I teach public health. So it's very, very different subject matter. They wouldn't, why would they think that they're the person that's teaching them about, we're talking about drug use, we're talking about
Mhm.
cardiovascular disease, all these things. Why would they think that, she wrote a book? But when I had to go to the Today Show the first time, it was kind of a last minute thing. So I taught class in the morning, took a red eye, was on the show on a Tuesday, came right back, and then had class on Wednesday. And I was just so like, I was tired, but I still had all this adrenaline and I was
Mhm.
excited. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna I'm gonna tell them. I'm just gonna show them a picture. And I did. And some of them were like, yay, but others were like, like, what's the Today Show? Like, like,
Right. Yeah.
no,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's fun. Like they keep me humble. But
I'm always
my school, my fellow faculty, the administrators, and other staff, they kind of learned about it, and
of course,
so that's
of
been
course.
really
Because I'm always thinking to myself, like, bruh, if I had Dr. Imani Perry's class or Clinton Smith or
right.
Desmond Wall, some of these people, they're still actively in the classroom. I'm like, I'll be in all of what you call that, after hours and whatever. I'll be in all of those.
Right. I've always thought, like, when you have these, really esteemed writers as
Yeah.
writing teachers, and you're,
Mhm.
you know, fortunate enough to be in one of their classes, it's just like I'd be like hanging on every word, and how amazing would that be?
I'd be
Uh,
raising my hand. They'd be like, "Son, put your hand down," because I should be. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I asked you about the Griot question. Let's
hmm
go into the black candle women, man. So out of all the topics you could have chosen to write about, tell me the spark whenever you were like walking or cooking, whatever you were doing, where you say, you know what, I'm gonna put the time and effort into talking about black candle women. What was that eureka moment for you?
As far as like their connection to voodoo in that sense,
Yes,
or
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
yes. So this book started off as a with a prompt in one of my writing classes. And I don't really remember the prompt, but thought of this woman who I just want. My big question was, thinking about our ancestors, is there something that an ancestor um, put into place like a century ago, so many decades ago, or generations ago, that has the power to manifest itself um, in today? What's something that my great great grandparents did that today has an impact on me? And so you can probably think about some ways that you might see that show up. But I thought about a curse, because that's something that's
Mm,
um, you know you can understand. That's something you can probably see from generation to generation. So that's kind of how I got the idea of a curse, and this family, and thinking of my own family. I'm like, oh, okay, curses. Well, maybe I want them to have like some background or some roots in Louisiana. And once I did
mhm,
that, then I was like, well, hey, we have the perfect place and culture and environment for having a voodoo sorceress curse this family. So that's kind of how it came together. It wasn't that fast. That happened over as I wrote more and more of what just started off as a scene and became like a chapter, and then my thesis project. And so during that process is when I came up with brought in voodoo. And it was just going to be a small element, but then the more once I started researching, that was
mhm.
giving that. Sometimes I say research begets the story, and probably shouldn't be that way, but for me, it just gives me more and more ideas. And so that's kind of what happened.
And people have to understand that's watching this, if you're not from Louisiana or anything like that, like how steeped that is in our culture.
Yeah.
Like I came from a very religious household. Both sides of my family are very religious, right? And I'm saying that
Yeah.
because we'll get to that question later in the show, but like a lot of times when you're a part of religion, a lot of the voodoo and other practices are kind of frowned upon.
Yes.
But even just by proximity of being in Louisiana, you're still hearing, don't eat this for that person, and watch out for this for that person, and make sure you
Right.
don't leave hair in the comb. And it's so many little small little things that you always hearing inklings of mysticism and magic, if you will.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I liken it to, you know, all types of cultures have different superstitions that
Mhm.
maybe they don't make sense to somebody else, but this is how we operate. And maybe I can't prove that is true, but I'm not going to take a chance that it's
Mhm.
that it isn't true.
Right,
So
right,
um
right.
yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. So my next question, I love asking writers about their process and their environment, different things like that. I had
Yes.
an entirely different question lined up for you. And at 3 in the morning, I deleted it and made this question because, once again, your acknowledgement section in the book is so wonderful. You speak about that tribe of people around you, checking on you, getting you a drink, calling you, just this business, hugging you, and things like that. Most time, writing is a very solo endeavor. I call it like climbing the mountain by yourself, climbing Mount Everest. You're up there enduring the elements by yourself.
Yep.
What is about the importance of that circle and the people that held you up during the course of making this book? It's not talked about enough.
Yeah. You know what was always very encouraging, and it was a little bitty thing probably on their part, but people who knew that I had this dream of writing books, publishing books, because I did a lot of other writing at my job. I worked before I was a professor. Well, I've been a professor for a long time, but not full time. Um, I worked full time for a local health department, and I would write like all sorts of things. I would write like if somebody was leaving, I would write like a going away sketch that we would perform, or I wrote a play for the centennial celebration. So I was always people knew that I had this imagination and I like to tell stories, and they'd ask, "Oh, do you like doing this?" And I would say, "Oh yeah, I would love to be a writer. I write stories all the time." Um and so somebody passing me in the hall and just saying, "Hey, how's the writing going?" That's just like, "Oh, that's something that you remembered about me, and that you connect that about my personality or something about me."
Mhm.
That those little things just were always very helpful. Just as much as somebody who's coming and saying you're doing a good job, keep it up. Question, as simple as
Mhm.
that, was very I think powerful for me, or showing interest in something that I'm interested in. So yeah, that was always very important. And just having friends and family who believe in you, especially,
Mhm.
because I it took a long time for me to get this book published. This was my thesis project for grad school, and I've written, like I said, I've written other things. I'd written 2 other books before I went to my graduate program,
Wow.
and I had an agent and everything. We didn't sell it. And so even before grad school, I'd gone through like rejection and disappointment. But after grad school, there's kind of this expectation, especially you see your peers who are getting published. And
Mhm.
you've gone to school for 2 years or 2.5 years, however long, um, and to still not get things moving. And so just people, saying, hey, I know it's going to happen for you one day, or, don't give up. All of those things are very, very powerful.
Yes, they are. I've been writing like 7 to 8 years myself, as far as published writing.
Yeah.
And people don't realize I don't live in a big writing community or anything like that. Like nobody's asking me like, "Hey, Sean, you still writing? Or
Yeah.
when the next thing coming? Or
Yes.
what's the next part of the process?" Like nobody asks you that. If you're not self-driven, self-motivated, you really, really almost can't even expect that kind of support. So whenever I saw that in your book, I was like, we got to talk about this because not enough writers talk about that.
Yeah.
How lonely it could be.
It can be very lonely, and you I don't know about you, but there's that self-talk,
Mm-hmm.
can be negative self-talk, and
Oh yeah.
the comparison, and all those things. I remember I went to AWP 5 or 6 years ago, a huge writing conference, and I went to a panel with people that they were debuts. And I think like 2 or 3 of them, people, they talked about their writing journey, and they're like, yeah, I just, and nothing, this is wonderful for them. But they'd say, yeah, I thought I would try my hand at writing. So I wrote a book. It took me about 6 to 8 months, and I sent it to an agent, and the agent bought it. And 3 months later, I had a book deal. And I was just like, that I, again, very happy for them, or people um, that happens to, because that's amazing, right?
Yeah.
But it was so disheartening for me, as somebody who had, you know, not only dreamt of this, but put in a lot of work. But that's I think how that you're very passionate about something, right? Because I would have quit, I would have let it go, but and I did, but I came back to it. So that's how I knew that, this is something that sustains me. This is something that I need. And it's something that I enjoy too, right? The process of writing, it's hard, but I enjoy it. So that's, I think, what I have to come back to in my mindset. And that's what kind of gets me through the challenging times.
Yes, ma'am. Because a lot of my audience are writers and people that want to be writers. So this particular part of the show that we're talking about right now might be the most important part in the whole thing, as far as inspiring somebody and
Yeah.
uplifting and motivating somebody that might be sitting there. They got a full manuscript in their laptop, but they haven't pressed that send button yet, and they're just sitting on it because they're nervous or anxiety. But it's like, we all go through these things. Man.
Right.
We
Yes.
all experience this.
Yeah. And it doesn't stop once you're, once you're published, right? There, I'm part of this group that we met through like a Slack community for new writers or debut writers. And so most of us in the group had books that came out in 23 or 22. And so we're all now focused on our second book. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and just the challenges with the getting the second book out. Do you write the whole thing and sell it if you didn't have a too big deal in the first place? Do you pitch with a synopsis and some sample chapters, but then you're
Mm-hmm.
locked in, and then you have this timeline or this deadline, and then feedback, and all those things. So it's great, to finally get your foot in the door, but it's still a bit of a slog. Not, definitely not as hard as getting published the first time for many people, but
Right.
it's
Right.
not just like,
So,
okay, book published, I'm done, everything I
no.
write now on is just, it's gonna come to me and it's gonna sell right away, and no. Yeah.
Because in my time, I've been some years doing this show, for an example. So when I'm doing my homework leading up to the show, I realized oh, this author had this certain press first book, and now they're with this press, and now they're
Yeah.
with that press, and now University Press, and now they're
Yeah.
with. So clearly, as they shop the next thing, it wasn't an automatic re-pick up. It was like, okay, I got to go find somewhere else to go for whatever reason that is. So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not easy as just going out there and
Yeah, I have friends that are dealing with, agents who have left and now they have to go to
mm-hmm,
another agent and,
right,
this
right,
is not the agent that selected them, it's the agent
mm-hmm,
that, it's like, "Okay, I have to take on this client," and maybe they don't believe in them the same way. Same
that's
thing with
right,
an editor that leaves, an editor is going to find something that they can can connect to, and they feel that they can help to optimize the author's work. But if you have an editor who didn't pick that book, sometimes there's some challenges there, right? And so yeah.
you are raising up something I never thought about until you just said it. Because like I don't know if you follow sports or not, but like in the sport world, when a new coach comes in, all the guys he didn't draft himself. It's kind of like I didn't pick those guys.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
inherited those people.
Right.
So they might get cut, they might get traded, they might. I mean, I have no real emotional connection to those people. I didn't pick them.
Exactly.
So yeah, that makes sense in the writing world that would happen.
Yeah. And there's such, there's a lot of turnover,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
at agencies and also at publishing houses. And
Right,
so
right.
it's I'm it's surprising how often I've heard that similar story. Um, but yeah, yeah,
I love it. I really, really appreciate your writer's transparency for the show, man. I appreciate that. So, even in fictional stories, everything has a real base to it, right? They say in comedy, the best jokes have the most truth in them. So, what are some of the real base of the Black Candle Women? Where did that come from? Where did that real thing spark the fantasy? What's the real in it?
hmm well, I think a lot of it came from maybe not something real for me, but I'm an only child,
Oh, me too.
and oh, you are
Me too.
too?
You
Oh,
can guess
yeah,
it.
you get it. We're a special kind.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and my parents had me when they were older, and so I also didn't have, my grandparents weren't alive when by the time I was born. But I've always, like, longed for sibling relationships, always wanted to have relationship, wished I had grandparents when I was growing up. But also as an only child, I had, big make believe type of kid, which is part of where I think storytelling came from. But always had like made up friends, make believe scenarios. And so I think, at least with these women and their relationships, these are the relationships that I wish that I had. So I wish I always wanted a sister. I was so jealous of friends who had like, it's like a built-in like best friend, like, especially if you have a sister that's or a sibling that's close to you in age. And so that was the relationship between Victoria and Willow. They're sisters in the story. And then also the relationship that they had with their grandmother. And so that's, I think, kind of what really grounded the story to me personally. Even though those were elements that I didn't have in my life, they were relationships that I really wanted in my life.
Let me tell you, to say that's not your real life, the women you wrote in this book and their relation to each other, their banter, how they were opposed but needed each other, like all those elements sounded so real, and I really appreciate that. To say it wasn't your real life, that's
Oh,
incredible writing. You know.
thank you. Yeah, yeah. Um, and I will have to say that I have four daughters, and
Mm-hmm.
they're all through their teenage years now. So I did pull a lot from Nikki, who's a
Yeah, just
teenager.
watching them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, and
Hmm.
also sister dynamics between them too. I'm sure I pulled,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
yes.
We have
Yeah.
a wonderful question from the chat. I always love my chat. I love my intelligent audience that I'm blessed to have. What was the most enticing thing about writing a generational saga? Is the question from the chat. Shout out to the chat. Thank you very much.
Um, oh, that's a good question. Um, I love books about where we see different generations. Um, like the love songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. I love those types of stories. There's also one of my favorite books is Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides, and it's the same thing. I just, I don't know, I just enjoy seeing again how traits, how stories are passed on, and you see these elements of family that are similar because they have the same roots, but they have their uniqueness, and so they kind of sprout off and they can kind of bloom in a new way that's still related, right? It's still the same flower, but it's a little bit of a different color, right? So you start to see these differences with each generation, even though it's there are cycles and you see things repeat themselves. And so the idea of a generational curse, we talk about generational curses a lot, and in this case it's an actual curse. um, but I think I also, and I said this in another podcast interview, the idea of generational blessings, right? Just we can have these cycles of negative things that we see passed down among families, but there are also beautiful things, abilities, right? Like in my family, cooking is not a generational blessing for us, unfortunately. But you see that I've seen it happen in other families where, uh, great grandma can cook, grandma can cook, the mom can cook, the kids, they're picking these things up and maybe they take it for granted, but it's something that's beautiful, and seeing those types of things passed down, I just thought is really kind of fun to investigate.
Even though I'm an only child by blood, I have a very unique family upbringing because in my formative years in our household, it's me and my little cousins. You have my mom, my aunt, and my uncle, and then my grandparents. This
Mm.
is all in one household.
Yes, yeah.
And all of us have our own unique relation to my grandparents in our own
Yes.
way. And then my aunt is like a second mom to me. Like she really,
Yes.
really helped to raise me, right? So we have our own thing. And then my uncle, and then like my cousins are like my siblings. So it's a very unique upbringing. It's hard to describe, but that generational household I see in the book is very, very important. It really touched me from my upbringing.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I love the idea of um having so many generations in one household, right? There's a special kind of support, and again, yeah, like as you said, the relationships that individuals have, they're so dynamic and special. I could each of my kids, they have a different relationship with
Mhm.
me. Some of them are going to FaceTime me every time they reach out to me. Some it's just a text. Some they're
Mhm.
going to on my birthday they're going to call me at midnight and like sing a song, and the others, maybe somebody else, I'll get a delivery, you know, at home. So all those special kinds of relationships, when you have so many generations in one home, it's even greater. So yeah, that's beautiful, your upbringing, it sounds like.
Yes, ma'am. So let's go to a more serious topic for one small second. We mentioned earlier at the top of the show. I want to bring it back though. A lot of religions frown on voodoo, hoodoo,
Yeah.
voodoo, all these other indigenous traditions that we had in our culture way before the colonizers, right? So tell us a little bit about the importance and that element of the book and your research in the man in the book. You have a lot of different spells and things you're doing, and they're writing things down, and once again, oral traditions, hearing things. Talk about that element of the book.
Yeah. So I again I had a lot of fun learning about voodoo and hoodoo and researching it. I think what I knew about it before was a lot similar to what a lot of people know about voodoo and hoodoo, and it's kind of the Hollywood version of everything, or the even just like the French Quarter version. If you walk by I think they have the Marie Laveau House of Voodoo, and that you go in there and you think, oh, okay, this is what voodoo is, or this, Um, but what I learned is that uh, voodoo, the religion, and hoodoo, the practices, and kind of what we think about what that Hollywood version of voodoo is really more in line with what hoodoo is. But really, it's all about uh, it's a lot of traditions, right? But at the heart of what the hoodoo and voodoo are doing is really trying to help people and heal people and make people whole, make people better. It's trying to find a remedy for a problem, whether that remedy is offering up a prayer to a spiritual being, and asking that spiritual being to go to God on the person's behalf. Similar to what Catholics do. I grew up Catholics. Similar to what Catholics do with saints, right? Um, or trying to help somebody get a little bit of money in their pocket, right? Um, just like any type of religion or practice, you see people using um, beliefs or certain types of power in negative ways. And I think that's what people uh, think about with voodoo. And that's really not the case in for
Yeah,
practitioners of voodoo. That's really not the way that people are using voodoo and hoodoo. They're using it
right.
to help people. Really, it's marginalized people, people that have suffered injustices, um, women, Black people, people that need support.
Mhm.
Um, And so I wanted to highlight that with this family,
Yeah,
um, that they are using this unique ability that they have this blessing that they have, to help and to heal.
right.
Um, but it's a
Yeah,
book and it's a story, so
yeah,
maybe somebody's
sure.
going to use it in a way that they're not supposed to, and but in real life though, that I think those instances are much less common than people think.
In my years, besides all of this, I love studying history and things like that. In my years studying the indigenous people and stuff, I look at how religion demonized this stuff, right? But you mentioned Catholicism. They have ashes on the forehead, Ash Wednesday. You have they're lighting candles, right? You have the altar, yeah, altar boy. You have all these elements. But whenever another culture has an altar at your house and you're giving offerings of different kinds, that's frowned upon. It's like you're doing the same kind of thing.
It is
I never understood that.
right, right. Yeah. It's interpretation, and it's look who is doing it, who's practicing it,
And they have
and
all of these saints and everything, and then you have your people that you're honoring and that you venerate,
right.
your lineage or whatever that might be. I mean, you know.
Yes. Yeah. Um so yeah, I I came to have a lot of respect for these practices, and a better understanding.
Yes, ma'am. Another wonderful question from the chat. Even if not your family in Louisiana, did anybody in your life inspire any of these characters?
Um yes. Uh I told my husband that I was in this interview, so he's in the other room, so hopefully he can't hear me. But somebody from his family was definitely an inspiration for my favorite character, which is Madeline. Um, she was just somebody who she doesn't buy into any of the beliefs. It's just all foolishness to her. She's gonna tell things like it is. She lived her life the way that she wanted to. Some people might call it improper, um, but she I enjoyed having her in the story, and she was really based on, well, not based on, but uh, influenced by a person on my husband's side of the family.
Hmm. And I think that her character was, I don't want to say the word comic relief, but like her character kept it
Yeah,
light,
yeah,
kept it moving, kept it going. Whenever a serious moment happened, she had certain things she would do or say in the most odd time, but it was needed for the moment. It
yeah,
was always wonderful.
yeah,
I definitely enjoyed that character.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of characters, Willow. Willow is my favorite character.
Hmm.
I love any Willow chapter. I was like, yes, more Willow. Right. So tell us about the creation of the Willow character. And as a writer, are you the kind of person to have like a character board and you have all the attributes and you have backstory and things that go into that character? Like, how do you go about doing that?
Yes, I have I kind of use any and every method that will work to get my words down and help me with characters. So I have Trello. Have you ever heard of Trello? Um, Trello, there are these you make these electronic boards, and they're just kind of like lists.
Okay.
Um, but I know there's probably a more like official name for the type of board that it is, but I use Trello for my characters, but I also have like a notebook that I write down. I write Well, I write in Word, but I also use Scrivener. So Scrivener has some tools for characters, so I'll have notes there. I try to think about what the person might look like. So I'll find a picture online and put that in Scrivener so I can, recall what, you know, what color eyes they have or what their hair looks like and how it might change uh, over the course of the story. Um, but yeah, and anything and everything to help me remember, because if you couldn't tell, I have like the worst memory. Like I'll write, and I'm sure this happens to a lot of writers. Maybe this happens to you, especially in the early days when you don't know your characters as much. But you'll start writing something about them in one chapter, and then the next chapter, they had 20/20 vision, no issues with their health, and then the next chapter they put on their glasses, or they're they you know reach down for and rub that part of their leg where they had the surgery, or something like that, because but that's because things come to you. And so, at least for me, it takes me time to like really get to know my characters. And once I get to know them, then I don't have to remember because they're in here and they're with me all the time. But definitely when I'm first writing something, I have to kind of write around for a while, and then I get to the point where like, okay, this character is, I've fully embodied them. They are a part of me. And not that I know everything that they're going to do, but I have an idea based with this scenario. This is probably what they'll do, which is great. But then sometimes you have to get out of that because you want your characters to surprise you and do things that, not something that is totally out of the ordinary for them, but to get the story going in a different direction. So Willow, a lot of Willow is how I wish that I sometimes behaved. I'm not quite.
That's the alter ego.
Huh?
That's the alter ego, Willow.
Well, with Victoria is probably more. I'm probably right in the middle of Victoria and Willow as far as like my temperament. I'm kind of a rule follower in many cases. I do, I have a lot of plans. I like schedules. But every once in a while I can be spontaneous, and but I don't often say what's on my mind, and that's what I loved about Willow. And sometimes I care too much about like what people will say or what they will think, and so I admired that about Willow's. She kind of took on some of those Madeline characteristics. So I enjoyed exploring maybe who I could potentially be by writing Willow.
I love it. I totally love her mentality, and she was kind of one of the more skilled people in the whole book. Like she was very central to me. Even though she wasn't the main event, but she was very central in the household and family, even in the business. Like she probably had the most
Mhm.
skills, as far as a lot of things in the
Right.
book.
Yes.
Totally loved it. Yeah.
Yes.
I love this element that I'm seeing lately. So inside the book, there's an actual book inside the book that the family has, and they pass on through generations. They have remixes. They're taking away pages and hidden them. A lot going on with that, right? And so tell us about the importance of like this family, like an heirloom, if you will. It's a thing the family passed generation to generation. I love
Yeah.
seeing that in different books that I read, like the Black Cake. It had recordings, stuff
Yes.
like that. So tell us about. I saw once again the back of your book, the author's note, talking about your family's cookbook and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I actually have, I keep it here. I have this. This is an old, kind of what the book was based on. This is an old book of like a bunch of like my mom's recipes and newspapers and all sorts of things that I. This is like one of many, but this is the one that I have in here, kind of for inspiration. I had it for inspiration, but my mom was a teacher. She lived in she was born in Bogalusa, Louisiana. And so I would find all sorts of like I guess the electric company, and this might have been in New Orleans. But they uh New Orleans Public Service, Middle South Utility System. They would publish recipes, I guess, and send them out with the utility bills. And so I have a bunch of those with her notes. And I kind of thought, like, what a great way to kind of pass on like history and for me to like understand where my mom came from. And maybe just even there might be like a little note to herself, pick this up Sunday at 6 o'clock, right? And me thinking about like, oh, what is she picking up, or what's going on in her head? Why is she circling this recipe, and when did she make it, and how did it turn out? As well as like greeting cards I would find in there. It's just kind of a little time capsule, I guess, that I was able to open up and explore. And so that's another element that wasn't originally in the book that came later, um, to have a documented way of passing on these stories.
I could not imagine. I cannot imagine this book without that book. It was
Yes,
so central. I can't imagine it without having
yes,
that book being passed and talked about and looking for it. I can't imagine that.
yes, yes, yeah. So I do think that like helped the story out a lot, and that it's had so many iterations, as you can imagine, over time. But yes, I think having the book within the book was, yeah, like you said, I can't imagine the story without the book.
Before we leave, I most time hypothetically ask my guests, like, could you imagine your book being a TV show or a series or a movie? Well, I see that your book is literally being picked up to be a TV series, correct? A movie?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Hopefully everything works out, and this is something that we will be able to see. But so uh, Jenna Bush Hager has started a production company. Um, I liken it to Reese Witherspoon, how she has her production company, and oftentimes she's adapting her books for movies or shows. And so this is new for Jenna, but they have optioned my book, and so they've attached a showrunner, and they are
Mhm.
shopping it around, and so
Yeah.
to the streamers, and we are just hoping that it lands somewhere very soon. Um, and yes, and that's
So,
kind of an incredible thing if it happens.
if you had a chance to be sitting there in the casting room, who would
Mhm.
you want to cast for some of your central characters? That's the question. Who would you want to cast for some of these people? Have you thought about that yet?
Yes, have thought about it quite a bit. Um, and I keep seeing this pop up because I guess I'm following on online, but or on social media. But I really want Jasmine Guy as Madeline. um, I know, I mean, I still think of
That
Jasmine
would
Guy
be hot.
as being in college, but I think she's about Madeline age right now, and
Yeah,
I could see her having a lot of
yeah.
fun with that character. Um, so I really like her. I like Janelle Monáe as Willow. Um, I think we've also talked, about, uh Angela Bassett, I think is Madeline? No. Oh, no, Angela Bassett is, Bellanova back in the 1950s, I think. Um, and then for Victoria, um, a few different people. Oh, Storm Reed as Nikki, and, shoot, I always forget the woman's name, um, but did you see From Scratch? That was a Reese
Hmm.
Witherspoon.
I've heard about it. I never saw it yet.
Or, gosh, what else was she in? There's another woman that I really love as, Victoria, but of course, I can't remember her name.
That's fine. That's cool.
But yeah, but a lot of different ideas. Oh, I think we've also, uh, maybe like, a Pam Grier. I don't know,
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
finding some, yeah, there's so many talented
Yeah,
Black actresses,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, So
I just,
yeah,
I just as a fan and a book lover, I love the amount of books being turned into movies lately. The Other
yeah,
Black Woman,
yes.
Black Cake, once
Black,
again,
Black
all these
Cake was
different
really
things.
good.
Yes, yes. See, I'm an opposite person. Like most time, a TV show or a movie is like, oh wow, now I want to read the book.
Yeah,
Most of my friends say, no, I don't want to. I don't want to see it. I want to read the book first. I'm the opposite. Like the
yeah,
movie or the show made me get interested to invest in reading this book. So I think it's very important what you're doing as artists, making these books that be turned into movies.
yeah, yeah. I think it's great that we're s- seeing. I mean, I don't know if it's more. It feels like more, but I
Mm-hmm.
definitely hope that that is a case, and we continue to see it and get support from people watching. Right?
Because as all these streaming platforms, they want to have their own like original programming, so they want their own thing. So of course they gotta look toward us writers, like, hey, we need some new stuff. We need
Yeah.
something that's exclusive. So I tell all my writer friends, like, man, keep on writing because you never know. You never
Never
know who's
know.
watching.
Never know. I mean, even, you hear about things years later,
Mhm.
people buying rights because the
Yeah.
streamers, depending, there's an ebb and flow. Sometimes they have tons of content, sometimes they're kind of scaling back, but um, they're always going to be on the search for
The next
content
thing.
that already exists. And so, yeah,
Okay. Before we get out of here and respect your time, will there be a Black Candle Women Part 2, or are you writing something totally different for the next episode?
I am writing something different. Um, it might have some similar elements and tone, a little bit of magic, but totally different story, totally different characters, but definitely still some of that generational type of elements in their families, but definitely a much different story.
You mentioned earlier, I want to ask you this question, but it's a good time for it now. After the fanfare of the first book, when you sit down in front of that blank Microsoft Word document for the next one, like, is there like nerves or is there like an expectation to like live up? Like how do you emotionally feel about that?
Yeah, it's kind of it's the ups and downs. I'll get excited about it, especially I'm at the point where like I'm about 130 pages in, at least on the first draft, and I'm trying to put together a synopsis so we can pitch it. Um, and then I think about I'll send it, if I send something to my agent or to a friend to read, then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so that's when the anxiety comes, right? And especially in early draft because there are, those it's a messy first draft. But yeah, kind of those old voices can creep back in. Just maybe it's a me thing, but I kind of feel like uh and some people are very confident about anything that they write, right? But uh I'm just excited to have an opportunity to pitch another book, and so I want it to be quality wise the best work that I can make it. Sometime for me with this book, I have the idea in my head. I'm just worried about um being able to pull it off to execute it. So I think that's my big fear is whether or not I can execute this amorphous idea in my head.
Okay, okay. Well, I'm gonna tell you right now. If you need some beta readers, we over here waiting. We over here in beta land. Me and my wonderful audience. We love beta reading.
Say no more. You're on my list. I'm going to take you up on it probably pretty soon. So,
Yeah, I love to. I mean, as a writer, first of all, I know how hard it is to get quality betas. It's very
yeah,
hard to do. So
yes,
I love to beta read whenever I can because I know it's a hard thing to get good quality feedback. Second of all, you're definitely welcome back to the show whenever the book is published. Come back to the Sean P. Series anytime, and we'd love to promote what you're doing.
that would be wonderful.
Thank you very much. Thanks for saying yes once again. Thanks for everybody in the chat. Thanks for y'all comments. Thanks for y'all questions, y'all time. If you're watching this later on, still leave me a comment. I'll come back and circle back and give feedback, man. So I love y'all. Thank y'all very much. And next Thursday is my next guest. I'm booked until June. I'm telling you, these shows are coming back to back, man. So the Sean P Experience. See y'all till next time. Thank you very much.
Bye.